The third medium-term plan of the Vision 2030, running from 2018 to 2022, gives top priority to the social pillar.
As you implement this vision, Daktari, there are others that you've mentioned that have been added, the big four, and housing in particular comes to mind. It's a huge project, 500,000 housing units. The cost is massive. What is the interlinkages that you're looking at between the private sector and the government?
Thank you very much. I think the big four includes affordable housing, affordable and universal health for all Kenyans, food security for the nation, and jobs created out of manufacturing, where we are focusing on value addition on agro processing industries and commodities that we have been exporting, we process them down. But zeroing down on housing, it means on the social pillar, we needed to upgrade and uplift the living conditions of Kenyans, because they are educated, they are healthy, and they are hungry. So food becomes very critical. But also, where are they sleeping? Where do they walk in? Does the dwellings give them a feeling of pride, esteem as a person? It is true the target is very ambitious, 500,000 houses in 5 years. The good thing is that this is not being delivered by government. The government is a coordinator of this housing. The government is coming to provide infrastructure like RAD, and the policies appropriate. For instance, allow us to regenerate Easterlands. We have Bahati and the other estates of that. We're saying massive RAD, but underutilized. So the policy must come from the government and the county government to allow that RAD to be accessible to the private sector for development. The private sector is then organized such that it is the individuals who will then be given long-term loans, affordable loans to own the houses. And these houses are targeted, they are low cost. So from day one, because RAD is not a major component, you are reducing 40% of the cost of the house. Then funding has been mobilized globally, such that the developers are not necessarily using local capital. So there is no constraint. However, the banking industry is now of age. Every year, the Kenyan banking industry disburses about 1.2 trillion shillings in form of loans. So if we are talking about 100,000 houses, that would be affordable within the financial sector for the final beneficiary. The banking industry may not be able to fund the developers, but it disaggregated, it could. And lastly, let me say, the government has also a policy. Instead of accommodating civil servants, it wants to pay them a house allowance, and that house allowance becomes the repayment installment.
But also let's look at the critical component that has been there for a while now. Looking at the mortgage, for instance, active accounts are barely 30,000. What do you make of that?
It is true, in a country with 45 million or 47 million people, having just 24,000 mortgages, it's a dismal performance. But our biggest challenge with the mortgages has been the structure of our economy. Our economy is on 90% informal. And so the question of organizing resources in an informal, in a predictable way, predictable cash flows is where has been the challenge. And that is why the people in the informal sector are the ones who have missed in the opportunity. And as a result, what they have done is to build their own dwellings and houses from cash. So the mortgages has only been for the formal sector. The second problem is that land has been held for speculative purpose, and consequently land constitutes about 40% of the cost of housing, making it almost unaffordable for the majority of Kenyans. So that is where the challenge is, and that is why this proposal is intended to solve the problem of land as an input, the issue of policy and infrastructure. Sometimes sometimes we have land, but we can't develop it as private sector because there is no electricity, there is no water, there is no sewer, there are no roads. And that is government contribution. Now the government is coming and saying we'll develop all that infrastructure to allow citizens to build houses cheaply. And we are organizing that development. And then they are giving incentives, like tax incentives for developers of people who build more than 100 houses. So essentially, everything has been put together to focus on this problem. And that's why I'm optimistic. This time, the bottlenecks have been removed, we'll get it right.
Already, the government plans to set up the Kenya Mortgage Refinancing Company with initial capital of 16 billion shillings for banks to offer long-term loans.
This is the initial provider of mortgage at a fixed rate of interest. So that is where the incentive comes from. And the government has the ability then to borrow globally and against the mortgages that it's taken. So now most likely we'll have securitization in Kenya such that we don't have to have the challenges that we have had in the past of securities in the country.
Dr. Mwangi further expects property development and ownership to be aided through Capital Markets Real Estate Investment Trust.
LEADS will play a very significant role in building these 500,000 houses, in the sense that it will be a vehicle of mobilizing capital. It will be also a vehicle of ensuring those who have money but don't need houses are also able to participate. They will be the readers, and they will be benefiting from an economic gain from this big opportunity. That ability to bring capital of non-house interest, such that we create an opportunity of a return other than an opportunity of a mortgage itself. That is a brilliant way of mobilizing capital, and it can be very, very big. And lastly, it makes the cost of securitizing houses very easy, because it's at the LEADS level. It is people pulling up together their resources and owning an estate. So instead of owning a house which you can't afford, you own maybe the kitchen, and somebody else owns the toilet, and another one owns the bedroom. So it becomes very interesting. And then you have tax benefits. So essentially the returns on this venture might be very strong for those who have money. And that is the incentive, because money follows opportunities.
On to whether banks are well positioned to absorb the big budget, the Vision 2030 Delivery Board chairman had this to say.
So the good thing is that this budget is not to be met by Treasury. This is the budget of the private sector. And 1.5 trillion is a very small amount in an economy worth $65 billion. So it's a fraction. It could have been a massive amount if it was coming from taxpayers. But this is coming from individuals' pockets who wants to exchange what they have and a house. It's coming also from the private commercial banks that wants to make some interest from 20-year mortgages. It's coming from international capital that has seen a huge opportunity where it is the sovereign risk because of the way that it has been structured. So that is what is likely to make it possible.
This is insightful.
For Brick by Brick, I'm Ronald